Hello, thank you for joining us. We begin with breaking news, a major shakeup at United Airlines, the result of a federal investigation into whether United set up a private nonstop flight between Newark and Columbia, South Carolina, where former Port Authority Chairman David Sampson had a weekend home. United CEO Jeff Smisek is out, as are his vice presidents of communications and government affairs. Joining me is Chief Political Correspondent Michael Aaron. What do you make of this, Michael?
Well, this is potentially big news in that it brings David Sampson back into the news after a 4 or 5 month hiatus. United Airlines is the most important tenant at Newark Airport, run by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. It's been reported widely that there is a federal investigation into whether United Airlines improperly sought to influence the Port Authority. The press release from United Airlines about an hour ago said that their own internal investigation related to that federal investigation caused them to seek the resignation of Jeff Smisek and the 2 other executives. And as you point out, it all goes to what's known as the chairman's flight. United in 2011 wanted some enhancements at Newark Airport. They wanted the PATH system to run all the way to Newark Airport, among other things. I think they also wanted more berths for their planes. Smisek and Sampson reportedly had dinner in 2011 to discuss this. Sampson joked that he had a weekend home in Aiken, South Carolina, that he had trouble getting to. Smisek said maybe we can take care of that. Fast forward a couple of years, right after Chris Christie was reelected governor, about a week later, there was a big press conference at Newark Airport to announce that United was flying into Atlantic City and that this was further good relations between United and the Port Authority.
Joining us now by phone, Michael, is the co-chair of the Select Committee on Investigation, Assemblyman John Wisniewski. Assemblyman, what do you make of this?
Well, the press release, the notice from United Airlines talks about a federal investigation, talks about their internal investigation, doesn't specifically mention the chairman's flight, but it's hard to imagine that there is another federal investigation involving United Airlines involving the Port Authority that doesn't relate to the chairman's flight. So it's probably about that. And I know that from the press accounts of that meeting that happened, at least one of the people who was asked to resign, along with the chairman, happened to be at that meeting that evening as well.
John, it's Michael Aaron. It seems to me that David Sampson and Bridgegate have been out of the news for 3 or 4 months. The bottom line on this from a New Jersey political perspective could be Sampson's back in the news, i.e. Bridgegate's back in the news. Do you read it that way?
Well, certainly it was the Bridgegate investigation that ultimately led to the series of questions that ultimately led to the revelations about things such as the chairman's flight and other issues. And so this is not something that's directly related to the lane closures, but tangential. But it underscores the dysfunctionality that has existed at the Port Authority for a long time, where people in positions of authority thought they could utilize the authority given them, their position at the Port Authority, for their own benefit.
Will you be rolling this into your continuing investigation?
Well, the U.S. Attorney's Office is doing a fantastic job in investigating this. We certainly don't want to step on whatever they're doing. Remember, our investigation is about fixing the problem at the Port Authority, legislative reforms that would make this impossible to happen again. So there's still a lot of work to be done in that regard. Reform legislation between the 2 states is stalled. There's a difference of opinion as to how to approach it. But I think what this does show is that there is a need for top-to-bottom reform at the Port Authority, from changing the way the commissioners are appointed to the whole governance structure. It doesn't clearly work for the benefit of the people right now. And this is just one more piece of evidence that shows how it doesn't work.
John, you mentioned the dysfunction at the Port Authority. Hasn't that been addressed and smoothed out by John Degnan in the year that he's been the chairman?
Well, John Degnan has introduced some reforms, but remember, they're internal. They can change when there's a new executive director. They can change when there's a new board majority. what has to happen, there has to be structural, institutional reform in the compact between the states that authorizes the Port Authority so that no matter who's governor, no matter who's executive director, the reforms will stay in place. Right now, this is something that could pass in the middle of the night.
Do you expect other dominoes to fall, if you will, in this investigation?
Well, it's very hard to predict what will happen next. Clearly, internally, United Airlines looked disfavorably upon the conduct of their CEO and others and their organization in even agreeing to that accommodation that existed called the chairman's flight. And so we don't know what else was uncovered in that investigation. We don't know what else Mr. Fishman is looking at. I think it's one of the things that we have to stay tuned. We have to look at the details as they are known to us by either further announcements by any of the parties or other items that come up in our investigation.
All right. Thank you very much, Assemblyman John Wisniewski.